Welcome to day 5 of our coming out conversations journey. Again, just to keep recapping, we are coming out because of the Lord's word, where he says in Revelation 18, chapter 4, my people come out of her, come out of Babylon, come out of this oppressive system that worships mammon, come out of the system that's driven by greed, by pride, by materialism, come out of the system that plunders the earth and renders people without their God-given inheritance. And he says, come out of this system and let me lead you into the covenant system, the covenant economy. And you know what's quite interesting is, I'm sure for the people who know me quite well are probably quite surprised that before the start of this journey, I'd always used the terms kingdom system and kingdom economy. And I believe there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But since the beginning of the system, this journey, it's been interesting how covenant has almost become a major word for me. And I'm even saying to myself, Lord, covenant system, covenant economy, because in my mind and in my spirit, it's been evoking that deeper level of understanding that all of this flows from covenant. And this might be just something for me, but I'd almost made kingdom refer to something that can be achieved by implementing principles. Whereas for me, covenant has almost been something that is achieved by coming into the presence of God and being released from the presence of God by his voice and going with his presence so that we achieve what he wants to achieve. And part of that achievement is using principles to bring about kingdom systems and kingdom economy, but it's understanding that the starting point is in covenant. So if I almost look at personally, one of the big shifts in me is almost like the starting point. The starting point for me prior to the start of this journey was probably centered around my knowledge of the Bible and my knowledge around the principles of the Bible. What this journey so far for me has done, it's taken me from that knowledge to a point where I'm actually saying, but hang on, starting point is covenant, presence, and voice. And you know what? That might seem so trivial, because I'm sure some of you have already made that shift and already had that shift. But for me, that's the key in terms of where I am right now. So as we continue on this journey, you're probably thinking, this guy is still on Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 1 to 10, and I'm more or less still there. I've probably progressed a little bit to chapter 16 now, so I've added a little bit. But as I've done that, I'm still going to focus on the first bit that we have been focusing on, because that's really where my journey has almost just centered around the last few days. But when I look at the breakdown of those scriptures, I was actually just noting today that it almost looks as if you look at the first 3 verses, it sort of talks about idols. So there's something about idols. Then if I look at the from verse 4 to verse 5, the focus is on the return to covenant. And then if I look at verse 6, 7, it's almost focusing on how the enemy had a right to actually steal, kill, and destroy because we were not in covenant, because we were still worshiping idols. What's then interesting is that looking at verse 8 and verse 9, it's almost that command again to flee, to get out. Because then verse 10 into verse 13 is almost referring to the collapse of the Babylon after we've actually come out of it. And then, interesting enough, verse 13 going into 16 is almost now talking about the raising up of this army that now goes in to completely bring about the collapse of Babylon, but also bring back the plunder that Babylon has taken out of the earth and out of God's system that he wants us to be stewards of. So when I look at those first 16 scriptures, that's literally the summary of what this has been saying to me so far. And yesterday, momentum was one of those key things that was a revelation for me. The momentum, understanding that momentum is the presence and also the voice of God. And I think why the Lord has stopped us and almost got us to just spend so much time on this first bit is that he's helping us to build. He wants us to build momentum to be able to go forward. Because if we don't have his momentum, we can quickly go forward, but without his momentum. And it just made me think, how many times have we rushed into something and we actually have not spent time ensuring that we have momentum? How many times have we rushed to intercede, to war over cities, over economies, over God's prophetic word, but we haven't maybe carried the momentum that he wants us to carry into that war, and therefore we don't get the result. So perhaps we are stuck here because the Lord is wanting us to build momentum. And covenant is what builds momentum, because covenant is ensuring that we have the mass, the bigness of God, the presence of God, but we also have the speed. We have the voice of God as we move forward. And again, today, I happen to just look at Moses. When Moses was taking the Israelites, when he took them out of Egypt, again, that whole Egypt scenario of the Passover being another picture of this oppressive system that God rescued his children out of. But what was very interesting for me was when Moses sees the glory of the Lord in Exodus 33:12 until 16, let me read it for you. One day Moses said to the Lord, "You've been telling me, take these people up to the promised land, but you haven't told me whom you will send with me. You have told me, I know you by name and I look favorably on you. If it is true that you look favorably on me, let me know your ways so I may understand you more fully and continue to enjoy your favor. And remember that this nation is your very own people." The Lord replied, "I will personally go with you, Moses, and I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you. Then Moses said, if you don't go personally with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favorably on me and your people, if you don't go with us? For your presence amongst us sets us apart as your people from all other people on the earth. Wow. Moses had been given instructions to go to the promised land. God had spoken favor on him. God had said to you, I know you by name. But despite all of that, Moses said, if I can't go personally with you, if you are not personally with us, if you are not intimately in relationship with us, going with us, we are not going anywhere. Despite the fact that you have given me favor, you have given me instruction, you have given me everything, I will not proceed from this place if you don't go with us. For me, Moses understood the power of covenant in terms of presence and voice. And he knew that there was no way he could possibly make it successfully into where God was calling him to go if he didn't have the presence and the voice. And I thought, my goodness, how many times have I proceeded into something because I've heard the call and the instruction, but I haven't spent enough time literally just waiting because I'm just crying out for the presence and the voice of God to go with me, because that's what will produce the momentum and the result. And again, what has really challenged me is my knowledge of the written word in the past would have been good enough for me to say, let me go. I've got the written word. I've got the word of God. But what's been missing is, do I really have his presence? And do I have the real-time revelation of what his voice is saying right now for that particular situation? And I think Jesus, again, had an awesome demonstration of that. Even when the Bible talks about Jesus did nothing other than what he saw the Father doing, or he said nothing other than what the Father had given him to say. Jesus understood this issue of momentum. And I know this is probably going to sound so controversial, but I actually believe that Jesus, as man here on earth, if he tried to do something that was void of the Father's presence and the Father's voice, I don't think he could have actually have healed. I don't think he could have performed any single miracle. I don't think he could have done anything on this earth, even as he was as Jesus, if he was not completely connected to the presence and to the voice of God. And you see, today I've been saying to myself, oh my goodness, Lord, that's what I'm desiring. How do I put down the Bible knowledge, put down everything that I've ever known? But Lord, I want your presence. I want your voice. I want to be able to hear it clearly. And when I speak, may what comes out of my mouth be an echo of your voice, because that's only when momentum is going to be achieved. So it comes back down to covenant again. I think this is why the Lord is speaking so strongly at the beginning of this journey about covenant. We can make the declarations. We can release the prophetic word. We can stand on the calling and the assignment that God has given us. And that's all good. But somehow the Lord is saying to me, presence, voice, wrapped up in covenant, because you are my people and I dwell with you, that component, plus all the others, is what will get you the momentum to get you to where I want you to get to. It's interesting, even as we are still in this lockdown globally. I think one of the things I spoke about, I think in the very first session, I talked about how the Lord was just saying to me, as much as the world system is locked down, but the world system is locked down so that I can unlock my covenant momentum. And therefore, I think we are actually in a season of being incubated by the Lord while we are out of the system. I've literally said to myself and to Maud and my family, we are in incubation. We are being incubated so that when we come out, we're going to come out with so much momentum, because the Lord has locked down the world system so that he can unlock his momentum through us as we come back to covenant and as we receive and move with the fullness of his presence and the fullness of his voice, so that we are guided by his voice, but also what comes out of our mouths is the echo of his voice, and that's what goes out and never comes back void. It will achieve everything that he wants us to achieve. So I'm in this position where I'm saying, God, may we not proceed unless you give us the go-ahead to move forward. Because when you give us the go-ahead to move forward, it means that your presence and your voice is now moving together with us. So yeah, this just continues to be just completely overwhelming for me when I think about these things. And I think about how the Lord is journeying with us as we continue to have these conversations. A lot of what I'm sharing here are the conversations that I'm having. And I trust that there's some elements of my conversation as I share it with you that will give you revelation into even things that the Lord is sharing with you, but even more, because I believe in the body, God is speaking to us in different ways, and therefore you are probably getting so much additional revelation on this journey. And already, if I look at some of the WhatsApp messages, some of the emails, I mean, literally from all over the world, China, Taiwan, Zimbabwe, the USA, I sit and I'm in awe. It's just remarkable, that feedback, but also pockets of revelation that I hadn't heard on my journey that I'm hearing from other people. And it's just exciting, because I believe this is how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be an army that God is putting together that is so hungry for his presence and his voice, that will also get revelation. And as we are able to humbly speak of what the Lord is showing us, we begin to put the puzzle pieces together, and we begin to see this picture that he wants us to see, that we can't see individually. But it's only when the body begins to work properly that we are able to see it and we're able to construct it. And I'm so excited with what the Lord is doing here. I'm literally beyond myself with excitement. So, momentum, presence, voice. Today, I started having a few conversations on the issue of the idols, because what stops us from truly entering into the intimate relationship, what truly stops us from coming to that point of covenant, is the lovers that we have typically gone to, or the lovers that we are still, to use a very crude term, the lovers that we are still in bed with. And I started having that conversation, but I believe perhaps that's the conversation for tomorrow. And if that's where the Lord wants us to go, we will get into that tomorrow. Because again, as we continue to press into covenant, the issue of idols seems to be the primary issue that would stop us or resist us entering into that place of covenant, of presence and voice. So I think the Lord wants us to have a conversation on the issue of idols. So perhaps that's what tomorrow will be about. But again, continue to have your conversations with God. I have a very strong sense that by the time we finish these conversations, and by the way, they'll never finish, they'll continue, but the connections that will be made through this conversation, I somehow have a strong sense that they will result in a release of a momentum that we have yet to see. And that momentum will catapult us into that crossing over from Babylon into covenant. And that perhaps this is a pioneering journey that will set a pathway perhaps for others to follow. And as I say that, I say it with fear and trembling. I say it with humility, because it's not really about us. It's about the presence and the voice. So I look forward to tomorrow. I look forward to the conversations. And all I can say is God bless and amen.